ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Retro Warriors episode 365. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
So if somebody were to listen to one episode of our show every day, it would take them a whole fucking year to get to this point.
It actually took him a little bit longer because we have some like bonus episodes and stuff in there, I'm sure.
They can't listen to those.
No, listen, if you're on the year plan, you don't get those. Don't you're cutting those out. Those are fucking gone. Not much in the way of housekeeping. Things are kind of,
you remember like
finally
remember like a year ago when you were like in the housekeeping, you said things might be a little weird this week. I feel like every week since then has had that disclaimer. So.
This week has just started to feel normal for me as of yesterday.
How?
And I guess we can just kind of get into my week. We talked about it briefly on After Hours, and I won't go into the details of what happened because it's gruesome.
Yeah.
Which I forgot when I told Saturn the details, that he's pretty squeamish.
It's fine.
But my daughter sustained, I don't want to call it a very serious injury, but an injury that needed to be treated very seriously.
Right. But it's certainly a traumatic injury for someone her age.
Yeah,
or
very
age, really.
upsetting wound that we had to go to 4 doctors, an ambulance ride, and a CAT scan for. And that was all one night, 2 days. And then while she went through all those waiting rooms trying to see a doctor, she picked up some type of virus. And so finally she was home in recovery on antibiotics, and we were watching it, and they did not need to repair the wound because of its location.
Yeah.
It was in a very vascular part of the body, so they said it should be fine to repair itself. Yeah. And so then she was sick and throwing up for a few days.
Can't make it better.
Very high fever, and she's just now out of that.
That's good.
And then I had to take Ralph to the vet.
Oh, God.
Because he ran out of allergy meds and has now just scratched himself into a big scab, and then he got an ear infection.
Ugh.
And so really, in the last 7 days, I've slept through the night once.
Yeah. How was that?
That night was fantastic.
Sweet.
Oh my God, it was amazing. Last night, I was woken up at 4:45.
Oof.
And so yeah, it's just I'm just tired, and shit's been happening at my house. Ugh. And it kind of, gets into my week. I've learned that when I get very stressed out, I do I do little crafty projects.
Yeah.
And so I've been like painting miniatures and terrain for nothing. Like I don't play games that use either.
Right.
Like I don't, like it's not like I'm like, oh, I painted a castle for my D&D game. I play D&D online. Like there's no reason for me to do any of this, but it's
with a sweeping webcam across your terrain.
I'm not going to say I haven't thought about it. I could put it on a little boom arm and just like swivel it around.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what I've been spending my time doing, is mostly ignoring everything and everyone and just painting very tiny things.
Nice. I also woke up at 4:45 today.
Oh, there you go.
But because my alarm went off at that time.
Oh, not because your nightlight turned itself off?
Right. Wait,
because that's what I was woken up for. 4:45. My daughter said, "Oh, my nightlight turned itself off," and I'm like, "How would you know if you were unconscious?"
Yeah, I have a nightlight in the living room that is on a motion sensor, so that if I go in there to get water, I don't like trip on something.
She has a full string of like LED Christmas lights across her princess canopy bed.
Nice.
That must stay on 24/7, and it has this dumb auto timer that turns itself off after like 8 hours.
Right. Yeah, that'll do it.
So if she wakes up early, she's in my room telling me to turn her nightlight on.
Have just a quick question. When are you going to set up my princess canopy bed?
Look, I've just been busy, okay? The IKEA directions weren't very clear. I don't know, man. Which has now been converted. Now it's covered in ivy that we bought from the dollar store and stuffed snakes because she wanted it to be a jungle. So now it is a jungle princess canopy bed.
Nice.
That fucking turns itself off every other night for no reason.
It's a jungle princess snake canopy bed. Yeah, that's normal. These things happen.
She's real into snakes. She just really likes snakes.
Friendly snakes, like pet snakes, are so soft. They're very, very soft animals.
Yeah. Anyway,
Anyway.
so that's what I've been doing, and
Yeah.
I've barely even been in the Discord in the last
I
week or two.
noticed.
And of course, it's all right on the tail of vacation and then funeral. Like, I had like a week of semi-normal. Just feel like last time we were recording, I was like, yeah, things are starting to feel a little normal, and then it's like doctors,
You really
5
have
doctor
to stop
visits.
saying that. I think is what
you
it
know,
is.
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Because every time you say things are starting to feel normal again, something blows up.
I think I just need to redefine what normal means for me.
To be constant chaos.
And just stay perfect.
Yeah.
There you go. Things are looking weird. What have you been doing?
Aside from work, I've been working a lot earlier and later than normal. Dealing with some bizarre situations. So I've taken over support for one of our other sites that shut down, and this dude is like an incredibly aggressive, very high ranking guy.
Okay, yeah.
Who
Love
gets
those.
he gets to call whatever shots he wants. And
I used to work at Apple, and let me tell you, people like that fucking love Apple stores.
oh yeah, they do. Yeah.
Oh my God. And I used to have to cater to their whims.
Oh yeah. So this guy, he had got a custom desktop computer built, and he wanted it to be a desktop because he wanted a single 40 terabyte drive in it, and he wanted it to be solid state, and they don't make that yet, but the previous tech that supported the site he worked at made him a RAID array out of solid state drives.
You told me about this.
And the computer died essentially.
Yeah. And it was RAID 0.
Yes, it's RAID 0. Of course it is. Fortunately, the operating system drive isn't. That's something. But
There you go.
all
You
of
got some
his
data.
Yeah, all of his data is on this RAID 0. So we played around with it, and it's not getting power, and it has a custom fitted, weird shaped power supply. So we had to order one of those, and we finally get the new power supply in after 2 weeks of him having to wait for it and losing his mind. And I slotted it in there, and it gets power, but it still won't post because there's something shot on the system board. And I'm dreading that phone call, and I finally I finally brace myself, and I message him, and I'm like, hey, can you give me a call when you have a sec? And he calls me, and he's like, please tell me this is good news. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no. It's got power now, but it's still not working. And he's like, so what are my options? And I'm like,
Clean room data recovery for
No,
like
no.
10 grand.
so what I said was, I can get somebody from the manufacturer out here to try to replace the system board and see if we can get it to recognize your RAID 0 with the same system board reimaged with the BIOS transferred over. But it's going to cost us like 23 grand, and they can't be out here till next week. And he was, or not 23 grand, $2,300, and they can't get out here till next week. And he says, oh, that's fine. I'm on vacation next week. So yeah, just have him take care of it. All right, cool. Thanks. Talk to you in a week. I was like, oh, thank
This is the thing I've learned about these demanding executive types is that they never actually fucking need anything in any amount of time.
Right.
They just like that they can demand it.
Right. They want to know when the answer will happen, but as long as it's going to happen.
And they just get off on like, no, I need it now.
Right.
And like you making it happen.
Well, the great thing is he's never said that throughout any of this process. It was never, I need my data right at this second. It was always, I need to know what the solution is at this second.
Yeah.
It's been a pain. Anyway, video games. So I played that Alex Kidd remake.
Oh yeah, you're on
my
record
Xbox.
as such a huge Alex Kidd fan too.
So let me just say that this did nothing to change that opinion. God, it's still a garbage game. I apologize to everybody who appreciated Alex Kidd back in the day.
all of the UK just stopped listening.
But
just
you're
right
wrong
then.
because it's a garbage game made out of garbage. So it lets you switch between the new graphics and the old graphics, kind of like the Wonder Boy remake did.
Cool. Yeah.
However, it still has the exact same physics and collision detection as the original game, which means that sometimes enemies will hit you when the second that you're close enough to be able to hit them, and it's just incredibly frustrating. And then in that first level, it immediately dumps you into that water area that is incredibly difficult to get through. And it's done nothing to win me over. It doesn't do anything to make the game more accessible or more modernized or anything. It's just incredibly frustrating. So
it's unfortunate.
If you're already a fan of Alex Kidd, it's great because it really does have a lot of really neat and cute options and cute interface stuff, and the graphics are neat and the new music is nice. If you were not already a fan of Alex Kidd, this is not going to sell you at all.
I do kind of wonder, especially in instances like these where a game is, beloved by a very vocal fan base. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder if they were kind of got stuck in that sort of like weird messaging of like, hey, we don't really want to change the collision detection because all the diehards will lose their fucking minds. Right. They've been playing this game this way for like almost 40 years.
Yeah.
And they one of those instances where maybe they paid too close attention to the most dedicated of fans.
Well, I would think that they could have corrected for that simply by adding like a newcomer mode that just like gave you 3 hits instead of 1.
Or just in the options being able to change the collision detection to classic or new.
Even if they let me get hit more than once, that would be fine.
Yeah.
But you can't. You can get the thing that lets you shoot across the screen, and that helps a lot. But then as soon as you die, you lose it.
Right.
And fuck that game. Anyway, also I've been chipping away at Octopath and Xenoblade and remembering why I don't normally play more than one RPG at a time.
Yeah, I'm shocked to see. I saw you playing Octopath like yesterday, I think. Yeah. And I was like, what's he doing?
Yeah.
Sutter, no!
The good thing about Octopath, I will give it credit that I didn't give it previously the first time I tried it, is that because the game is segmented so much.
It's totally episodic.
Yeah, it is perfectly designed for these short sessions. And I don't have to remember anything about it because it teaches you how to play the game every time you turn it on.
Yeah, just like how you could suffer a head wound between every session of Skyward Sword, and the game would tell you what a green rupee is every time you turn it on.
It's all because you need to know. What is a heart? Oh, it fills 1 heart. Perfect.
Yeah, every evening in some kind of Sisyphus type situation, I'm kicked in the face by a donkey and I forget everything. So Skyward Sword was great for me.
Yeah, Skyward Sword, the game designed for that 41st Dates guy. And then Xenoblade, on the other hand, is the opposite of that, where it is not episodic. However, I'm still enjoying it despite taking some breaks in between areas of the game, mostly because I was taking breaks anyway, because anytime that I would get to a new area, I would waste so much time trying to fill out my map and finish all the side quests and everything that I would forget the story by the time I went on with it anyway.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting to the point where the story has lost all credibility to me. Mm-hmm. Because it has taken a couple of plot turns that are so dumb that I am struggling to accept the anime logic that it is using. And I have played a lot of JRPGs over the last 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. And I am struggling with a lot of the anime tropes throwing at me.
Because you're talking first Xenoblade, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some bits near. I think I'm nearing the end. I think I'm in like the last quarter of the game, give or take. Uh-huh. And like they just keep hand waving away everything, and they pulled that dumb trope where there's a character that is clearly a murderer. He's admitted to being a murderer. He's killed one of your party members. He's attempting to kill others.
Let me guess. They're going to give him another chance.
Well, here's the thing. So one of your characters has a literal sword at his throat, ready to kill him, and then your main character stops him and says, "No, we can't, or we'd be no better than him." And I'm like, what the fuck, kid? Just lock him up. If that's really your thing, if you don't want to kill him, lock him up somewhere.
Don't just let him go free.
Exactly. Like, that's the dumbest thing. And so I'm trying to push past these really dumb plot points because the overarching story is actually pretty fun, and I'm liking that. And I like the characters generally, except for one, the little cute adorable creature thing, which normally I love cute, adorable creatures in games.
It's his voice. He's got this very annoying voice.
Oh, it's not just his voice. It's everything about him. He's the most obnoxious thing in any game in years. But yeah, other than that, I'm actually really enjoying it.
Well, that's good. Other than all the shit you're hating, so you're not enjoying the gameplay loop, the story, the characters.
I'm liking the gameplay loop. That part's good.
Okay, well, there you go. It's something to keep you going. Let's do the news.
Yeah.
Sega announces they will be releasing a USB version of the Sharp Cyber Stick for the Mega Drive Mini 2.
Cool.
They have also announced another 11 games coming to the console, including Columns 3, Splatterhouse 2, and an all-new port of the PC Engine CD game Star Mobile.
Which, so far as I can tell, is some sort of weird puzzle game about balancing scales.
I'm down. This all sounds awesome. The question is, how easy is it going to be to get in America?
Right. I imagine that Cyberstick, even if they do release the Genesis Mini 2 over here, I doubt that Cyberstick is coming over here. And have you seen that thing?
No, I've not.
Oh, it looks so badass. So it's got a big-ass analog stick and some sort of like throttle-looking thing.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Holy cow. This is intense.
Yeah.
This is quite a yoke.
Right? That's a heck of a joystick. So, and because it's USB, it implies that it should work on a PC or a RetroPie or whatever you want to plug it into. And that's exciting to me.
Right.
But I imagine they're going to make 7 of them.
Oh, yeah. And they're going to sell them through LRG.
Right. And they're going to cost
et cetera,
$1 billion.
Et cetera. Yeah. I think it's going to be, I'm thinking like 120 to 150 for that. It's going to be my guess.
Yeah, I think they did announce a price range in that area, if I remember right.
Yep. That makes sense then. Yeah. Former Sega of America president Bernie Stoller, at the age of 75.
I left out the word died, unfortunately.
He died.
Yeah, he unfortunately passed. He at the age of 75.
Yes.
Very unfortunate.
That's how I wanted to read it, because I was like, I think you forgot to put the word died in here, but I was like, I don't want to say that if that's not what happened, and all the Sega fans listening are like, think they missed some news. Bernie Stoller did pass away, so that's sad to hear. Sonic Origins developer Simon Thomley of Headcanon says he's disappointed in how the game turned out.
Yeah, I can see that. Having played it a bit, for the most part, if you're just looking for a casual way to play the classic Sonic games, it's great. But
if you're $40,
right. If you're one of those people who is a diehard who knows every twist and turn in those games, you're going to be disappointed, because there's a lot of weird little glitches here and there, especially in Sonic 3.
And that's what his problem was too. He didn't really say anything about like monetization or price or anything like that. He was just like, hey, there was stuff in here that Sega fucked up and did not fix, and our name is on it, and I'm upset. That was basically what he was saying.
Yeah.
A new Bomberman game and a remake of Pac-Man World announced at Nintendo Direct, alongside other less retro-relevant stuff.
So
fuck you, Konami. Fuck you, Konami. Here's a new Bomberman. We're going to kill the old one first, though.
But it does look like this new one includes that game entirely in it. So everybody who paid for it before, thanks for your money, suckers. But for anybody who didn't pay for it before, it looks like you're going to get a new chance next year. But this one at least includes an offline mode, and they can't take that away from me.
They could find a way.
They'll try.
I'm sure they could find a way.
It wouldn't be the first time they've taken away a game from me.
And Pac-Man World's cool to see, although I was really kind of hoping for a collection.
Right.
Rather than just the first Pac-Man World.
Yeah, first Pac-Man World is okay, but 2 and 3 were really the great ones.
I mean, really, all of them, I don't know that I loved any of them. They were kind of in that camp of, like, just kind of good enough that, like, if they were all in one package, I'd be like, yeah, I'll pick that up. But a la carte, I don't know if I love Pac-Man World that much.
You think if they did release them all together, it would be the Pac-Man World package?
I hate you so much. Because, of course, it would be that.
Yeah, it would.
Atari announces a new 50th anniversary collection coming to modern consoles that includes classic arcade console and handheld games from the 80s and 90s, as well as some newer stuff. So wait a minute. Does that mean the VCS? Are they just moving on? I don't understand.
Oh, it's also releasing on VCS.
Oh, great.
Yeah, they mentioned that it was going to release on Switch, PS4, Xbox, Steam, and VCS.
You know what? Fuck it. Good on them for delivering on the VCS
Right.
and still supporting it. You know, I want to laugh at them because it's dumb, but you know what? They're still releasing shit on it, even if it's Atari games.
Now, I give them some credit on this because several games in this collection haven't been re-released in decades. A lot of Jaguar stuff and Link stuff.
Yeah,
there's Atari
totally.
ST games in here. Just a bunch of stuff that has not seen light in a very long time. Plus, some of their more recent stuff is also in this package. So that's, honestly, it's a pretty impressive looking package. And they got digital clips involved to make the package. So that's excellent news as far as I'm concerned. As much as I love to make fun of Atari because they ask for it all the time, I got to give them credit. This one does look like it could be good.
Totally.
As long as it doesn't end up being $100, which,
it could be.
They could fuck it up.
I'm glad to see a package from Atari that's not like, here's a bunch more Atari 2600 games.
Right.
Like,
Which is what I expect.
I just don't need that.
Because they've already released, 3 different collections on Xbox and PS4 that were that were old Atari 2600 games, and the packages were put together by At Games.
Yeah.
That's trash. Just fuck off.
Monkey Island director Ron Gilbert says he'll no longer talk about the game online after harassment from fans over game's art direction.
Just fuck people, man.
This is great.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks
People
everyone.
are just awful.
That's why you can't have nice things.
Right?
I sometimes feel bad for artists, of any kind of artists, musicians, writers, because they're always like, hey, we're going to do some new shit. And everyone's like, boo, do the old shit. And I'm like, that's got to be so fucking annoying.
Right?
They're like, God, that would drive me crazy. Nintendo fans spent $40,000 buying stock in the company just to ask about a new F-Zero at a shareholder meeting. I do like that the way the press kind of spun this story of like, just out of the goodness of his heart for the F-Zero community. No, he got a bunch of fucking stock. It's still good stock.
Right. Like, it's not like he burned the money.
Yeah, they act like he threw it off a cliff just to like ask, Emperor Miyamoto about F-Zero. Like, no, he owns a huge amount of stock in the fucking company now.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's,
and he can sell it later if he wants to.
The reason he did it is to make a bunch of money off the stock. He just also asked about F-Zero.
Right.
And all the press is like, man valiantly donates cash to ask about F-Zero. That's not how that
donates
works.
cash to the struggling Nintendo Corporation.
Comics Zone, Target Earth, Mega Man The Wily Wars, and Zero Wing all added to the Genesis collection on Nintendo Switch Online Plus. Pokemon Puzzle League confirmed, coming to the N64 selection. So all good additions.
They're getting closer to the point where I'm almost considering the service, because online Pokemon Puzzle League, that's a good deal for me.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of that.
I've said it before, and I'll continue harping on this, but any platform where I don't own the games, and whenever the platform gets shut down, my games and my save games go with it, and there's no plan for how I'll retain those.
Right.
I'm not willing to play any kind of game that actually requires me to put in any amount of hours. So any RPGs or anything longer. I think these are all good ads. It's all action games, puzzle games, stuff that you could sit down and play for a weekend, and maybe you're not going to be that heartbroken if you lose your save on Mega Man The Wily Wars.
Oh, I'll be heartbroken.
So all good ads.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, Nintendo is launching a warranty service for the Switch in Japan for about $1.50 a month or $15 a year. Nintendo will repair anything that goes wrong with your Switch, Joy-Con, dock, or AC adapter.
Yeah, this is beyond the standard warranty.
Yeah, so I mean, good.
Yeah, and it's not super expensive.
No, it's not.
But I am worried about the precedent this is going to set, where they just expect people to keep paying this forever and keep putting out shittier and shittier quality hardware.
The cynic in me wants to say that Nintendo is enacting this program to make money because they backed away from any type of next-gen or revision hardware for the Switch because of limitations from, post-COVID world when it's just too hard to get parts. And they were like, well, shit, we need the cash influx. We can't fuck people harder in the mobile space. So let's just kind of get every Switch owner to give us $1.50 a month.
Well, that said, the Switch keeps outperforming the other consoles in sales.
True.
So,
Well, it is also largely more available too.
Yes,
so
and-
that helps.
and also I understand it has a higher profit margin than the other systems. So,
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's basically like an 8-year-old Android phone. So
Right.
I imagine the profit margin is fantastic.
right?
So I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, like warranty services like this, especially for systems. I mean, the Switch has been semi-problematic at a hardware level.
True.
People have had issues. I've known multiple people with fans going out. We've got Joy-Con drift. I've heard overheating issues. I've heard docks scratching screens. I've heard it all.
I've started
heard
hearing about swollen batteries now.
Yeah, I've heard systems bricked from USB-C chargers of
Yeah.
certain types. It's just kind of all over the place.
Right.
So it's one of those things where we're like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and
Maybe.
honestly, if they did release the same service over here, I would definitely consider it because that price point is pretty reasonable.
My Switch right now, I'm trying to see how thick the layer of dust on it is going to get, because I have it set just kind of on a stand, so it's kind of angled backward next to my bed, because I just have two USB-C chargers there, and I swap it. I plug in my Steam Deck and my Switch, and I put them on both their little kickstands.
Yeah.
And my Switch, every time I walk by it, I'm like, oh man, that's real dusty. I need to dust it. And then it got like comically dusty. And now I'm just going to see how long it takes. And I keep almost picking it up to play Monster Hunter Rise.
Yeah.
And I think I might actually buy Monster Hunter on Steam just so I can keep seeing how dusty my Switch will get.
That is the price of this little project you have going on.
Yeah. Anyway, that brings us to the topic at hand. This week we're talking Final Fantasy Legend 3.
Yes.
Which is the third game in the Saga franchise that has nothing to do with Final Fantasy, despite what companies would have you believe.
Well, honestly, it has very little to do with the Saga series either.
Also that, yeah,
Really.
because, we'll get into all of that.
Yeah.
But release info, this was developed and published by Square. Reprint was published by Sunsoft on the Game Boy.
Yep.
This was released in Japan in December of 1991 as I'm going to try it, as Jiku no Hasha Saga 3 Kanketsu Hen.
Yeah, that sounds
which
right.
translates to The Ruler of Time and Space. Saga 3 Final Chapter came out in North America August 93, reprinted 98. As far as first encounters, I feel like I've tried to tell the story of like how I got started with JRPGs 5 different times on this show, and every time it's different. It's like the Joker and the Dark Knight. I'm like, hey, you want to know how I got started on JRPGs? Like, I feel like every time I fucking tell it,
Right.
I have some new revelation of like, no, I did play one earlier than that.
That's
And going into this, I was trying to say, yeah, Final Fantasy Legend 3 was, I think that was actually my first JRPG because I had it on Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I did not have the Sunsoft printing.
Okay.
And so it was very probably between 93 and 98 when I got the game. Or maybe I got it later than that and it was just an earlier printing. It's also very possible, yeah. But as I played Final Fantasy Legend 3 and recognized nothing, I realized I owned Final Fantasy Legend 2.
Oh. That one I've played a lot of.
So I think that might actually be my first JRPG. Nonetheless,
Yeah.
I have a lot of love for the Final Fantasy Legend games on Game Boy in general. I have vivid memories of being a young man and looking at the cover art for the first Final Fantasy Legend, which I didn't have because it has awesome cover art.
Yeah, it has the helmet and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and the other two are just like, it's purple or it's blue, what do you want?
Right.
And I remember going on GameStop's website and just looking, or it may have been Funko Land's website at the time, and just looking at the cover art for Final Fantasy Legend 1 and being like, oh man, so cool, but God, it's like $20.
Right.
I
For a
can't
Game
afford
Boy
that.
game.
This is insane. It might actually be cheaper than $20 now. The way Game Boy's going.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of fond memories. I was already playing Final Fantasy Legend 3 before we even decided it was going to be a topic, just because I wanted to go back and try it. And I've returned to it several times. And spoiler, to date, have never beaten it. So-
No, it's not under 20 anymore.
Oh, is it not? How much
No.
is it?
25 loose for the first game, and just over 30 loose for the 2 and 3. And for some reason, the Sunsoft reprint of 3 is more than that. That's weird.
Huh. Well, that's really even behind inflation for the last 20 years. So, technically cheaper now, adjusted.
If you have a complete copy, they all go for close to 200.
Oh, man.
Which I do have a complete copy of Final Fantasy Legend 2.
Well, Saturn, that's a $200 bill just sitting on your shelf right now, right? You pay your electric bill.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's your first encounters for Final Fantasy Legend 3?
Just sell this game that you have cherished memories of, and you can pay your electric bill.
There you go. You can get by for a little bit by selling your memories. And when you run out of memories, you can sell your body.
Right. I do that anyway.
Hurrah, America!
Yay. So I had the second game first. That was the first of the portable, quote, Final Fantasy games that I played.
Yeah.
Not at the time knowing that they were not at all Final Fantasy. So by the time that I did get Legend 3, I learned they were definitely not Final Fantasy, because this would have been after the reprint came out, but I happened to find the first print used somewhere.
Yeah.
And picked it up and intended to sit down and play it, but it was the late 90s and I had a bunch of PlayStation games to get to, so I just kept putting it off. And I think I maybe spent like an hour and a half, 2 hours with it over the years until we started doing this episode, and I just barreled through the game. So this is probably the game in the Saga series that I have spent the least time with until this, which is a real shame, because having played it, I probably would have thought it was my favorite at the time.
It is kind of regarded as the best of the three.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the black sheep of the three when it comes to the Saga franchise. It is the least Saga-like of them.
Yeah. I will also say that I don't have a memory of this, but just going by timeline, this had to have been my first Final Fantasy. Well, not this one, too.
Right. Yeah. Which is not a Final Fantasy, so it wasn't your first Final Fantasy.
Right. Well, it was the 90s, so it was Final Fantasy.
Right.
And then the next Final Fantasy I saw was Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, these games are fucking all over the place, man.
They just random number generator.
Yeah.
Just pick a different number, and they put it at the end.
Tell me about the development of Saga 3.
Okay, so just as a brief background, the Saga series itself was created by Akitoshi Kawazu, who was he worked on Final Fantasy II, most notably, but also other games at Square. And they just wanted to capitalize on the success of the Game Boy. Basically, they were tasked with making some kind of arcadey game on Game Boy. And when the team got together, they were like, well, there are no RPGs on Game Boy, and people like RPGs, and maybe somebody wants to play an RPG on the go. And so they decided to make an RPG instead. And after they made the first two Saga games on Game Boy, he went to go work on a Super Famicom sequel to them. And so he and his entire team were busy. So they were off.
There's shit going on.
Yeah, they're making Romancing Saga. But the higher-ups at Square still wanted another Game Boy game. The Game Boy was still fresh. It was the early 90s. They wanted to get something out there. So they had just formed this new development team in Osaka. And that team needed something to work on. So they're like, well, make a sequel to these Saga games. And this was basically their first project within Square. And they would the team would go on to make Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and Rudra's Treasure, and then be dissolved.
And usually, I see this game talked about in like Saga circles as like, oh yeah, the one the Mystic Quest people worked on.
Yes,
and I can never tell if it's said with derision or not.
Yeah, well,
I think it might be a little bit.
It depends on who you're talking to, I imagine.
Yeah.
And having played through this, I absolutely see that, because there's so many art assets that are just straight up reused in Mystic Quest.
Yeah.
So the composers were Chihiro Fujioka and Ryuji Sasai. They were also new to Square. They would also contribute to the Mystic Quest soundtrack. Sasai would also go on to work on Ridger's Treasure and Bushido Blade 2. Fujioka would help with Super Mario RPG. But then he did leave Square, but he came back to join Uematsu's prog rock metal band, the Earthbound Papas. Which
good job, Uematsu.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that the name of Uematsu's prog rock metal band was Earthbound Papas, and when I saw that, I was like, I gotta write that down. But now Fujioka also was the producer on the game, in addition to one of the composers. And after the release of Ridger's Treasure, he and a bunch of the other staff from Square Osaka left to found Alpha Dream, which was the company that made the Mario and Luigi games.
I've heard of those.
Yes. Yeah. And they were basically told to establish themselves as the studios that are making the game and take some risks and just make a new Saga game. And so they did take some risks by deciding to make it not like Saga games and more like other JRPGs. So they brought in things like the experience system and MP systems and stuff like that we'll talk about in a minute. But as we mentioned a couple episodes ago, this was Ted Woolsey's first full localization job at Squaresoft. And clearly he had not yet hit his stride. Because,
I thought you were going to say learned English.
Man, what a broken translation this is. Holy shit. And I took a bunch of screenshots of just terrible dialogue.
And they talk so weirdly casually all the time. They're just like, oh yeah, it's the world's ending stuff, so hey, why don't you go over there? And you're like, it reminds me of like D&D campaigns I ran when I was like 12, you know?
I love when characters are like, and this big bad guy is going to destroy the continent, and then like the next line down is your character : okay. And that's like his entire reaction
exclamation
to it.
Point.
Yeah. Sometimes
Great.
not. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And I also took a couple of screenshots of some dialogue that started overwriting other dialogue on the same screen, and so you had no idea what it was trying to say.
Right.
But it's I'll give him some credit because I'm sure that ROM expansion wasn't in the cards, and the original Japanese game apparently filled up almost the entire cartridge. So he probably didn't have a ton of room to work with, but still, man, it's rough. It was rough to figure out what they're doing in that game.
It was the just like super cash demeanor that everyone had. It was like a play put on by like the local like volunteer theater, you know.
I sent you some dialogue that a tree said to me, and I don't remember what it. They're talking to the tree. Well, first of all, they find a talking tree, and the tree says some stuff to them that's like story relevant, and your character says, "You can talk," and the tree's response is, "I just did," and then your character's like, "Have you seen any units around there?" And the tree says, "The bad guy was collecting them," and then your guy says, "Thanks," and then the dialogue ends, and that's the entire conversation.
What a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Let's talk presentation. This is a pretty good looking game.
Yeah, for a Game Boy game of 1991, I would say it looks really good.
Some of the as far as presentation goes, the UI elements are not spectacular. Specifically things like, one, there's no auto sort, which I know like that's a later thing or whatever, but oh my god.
What decade are you in, sir?
I know. But then things just like equipment is kind of weird. A lot of stuff is very truncated. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see. There's nothing in the game gives you the stats of any item. You never are privy to item stats. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just equip this sword or whatever it is, whatever weapon it is, and see what my attack stat goes up to.
And sometimes it doesn't move.
It doesn't move. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, well, shit.
Yeah, so this is something that I feel like a lot of newer players would be completely taken off guard by when you look at something like this, and the game seems completely obtuse. Like you just go into a shop in the game and it'll list 4 or 5 things. You have no idea.
You're like, okay,
right? It doesn't tell you if they're any good. It just tells you their price, and that's it. And what people might forget is the game in most games of this era came with a giant ass chart.
Yes.
that told you what all these things
All the
are,
shit
what
on
all
it.
their stats are, so you knew what the specs are, and you could go and consult your fucking chart and determine if you wanted to buy that axe or keep your sword. But with the re-release that just came out as a bundle has none of that. It's basically just Square saying, I don't know, you got the internet, kid, figure it out.
I will say that I would say this game is I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but I would say virtually impossible without some kind of documentation.
It would definitely be
Well, okay, and I don't want to be hyperbolic. I would say it would be extremely difficult without some kind of documentation.
I would
and I
say
don't
that
just mean
it's-
like maps or anything.
right. Yeah, I would say it's nearly impregnable without some sort of documentation, because if you're trying to attack this game on your own with no documentation, no internet, no nothing, you could probably get to the end of the game. You just probably still won't know how half of the shit in the game works.
Yeah. I've played many hours of it. You've completed the game, and I have a feeling we still kind of don't know how some of it works. But we're just in the presentation. So let's... It's a good-looking game, is my point, though. It's a very good-looking game for a Game Boy game.
One thing I will say to complain about the graphics is there are some areas, especially closer to the end, where some of the backgrounds or floor tiles kind of blend in with each other. So you don't exactly know where you can or can't stand, what is or isn't an exit. And that gets a little frustrating, but that's mostly in dungeons and mostly close to the end of the game.
Yeah. The soundtrack is pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
Like so many Game Boy games, pretty good soundtrack. Kind of shockingly good.
Yeah. I was pretty impressed with the soundtrack. And, looking at the other stuff these guys have worked on, I shouldn't be too surprised by it being catchy and earwormy, but I enjoyed it. I thought it worked well for the game.
Let's talk gameplay.
Okay.
Like you said, experience and levels are brought over from Final Fantasy. MP pools. There's no real like skill system or anything like that.
So yeah, just real quick, as if for people who don't know the Saga series, its progression works like Final Fantasy 2, where there's no experience, and you just occasionally get stat upgrades at the end of battles. So sometimes your HP will go up, sometimes your strength will go up, sometimes whatever goes up. The other big thing about the Saga franchise is in most of them, everything you have is consumable, from weapons to magic to items to everything. So if you equip a new sword, that sword might have 35 uses. And the 35th time you use it is gone, and you got to go buy a new sword. And that's not the case here. It acts more like a traditional Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or traditional JRPG.
Yeah. So your party is fixed.
Right.
You're given 2 mutants and 2 humans.
Right.
Mutants are kind of your magically inclined characters. Humans are kind of your martially
Generic.
inclined characters.
Yeah, and in Japan, the mutants are espers, which makes more sense to me. I don't know why they called them mutants.
It is weird. Like espers. If I saw esper, I'd immediately be like, "Oh, those are like my magic people." When I saw mutant, I was like, "Are they what?" I don't know what that means.
That means that they're all the guy from Toxic Avenger.
There you go, Toxie.
Yeah.
His
so
name.
In the whole Game Boy Saga series does this. They call them mutants in the Western translations, and I don't know why. It's a terrible translation.
The game does it every now and then, give you guest party members, but you control them. What's cool about them?
To control them.
Yeah, because there's an auto battle function, which is this is pretty early for auto battle.
Oh yeah.
I will say that the auto battle is moronic.
Yeah.
That's
the best way to put it.
It's a terrible auto battle that really I would say that auto battle works well if you're just grinding low level monsters.
Yeah,
but
that's when I used it.
It doubles the length of any low level things because they cast Shell and Protect at the beginning of every fucking battle.
Oh, see, I didn't give them those spells.
Oh, yeah. No, I give everyone every spell because I was like, I want maximum versatility.
Well, you're going to really quickly run out of room for spells then.
Well, yeah, you learn that, and then you start deleting the ones you don't use. But when I had the space, I was like, I might as well fill it up.
Oh, no. I gave everybody like one attack spell to start with, and then gave everybody one healing spell, and then tried to keep it as minimal as possible, just so that their AI wouldn't, constantly slap themselves.
Well, and then
in the
like
face.
I got a fire staff, so I can delete my fire spell and
Right.
stuff like that. But it's the guest members are kind of nice. A lot of times you seem to get them like in dungeons, because you just have to walk the fuck back out of dungeons.
No, you get the exit spell almost immediately.
I did not get it at all ever.
It's like after the third dungeon, you're given, like, it's a quest item at the end of the dungeon. They give you the exit spell.
I'm 10 hours in on the game. I've played 10 hours of this game,
How?
and I have no exit spell, and I'm struggling.
I don't know how you missed the exit spell. Yeah, it's at the end of the second or third dungeon. I don't remember which one, but it's fairly early in the game. They give you the exit spell, and then you can just cast that to get out of any dungeon.
Motherfucker.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks.
Also, eventually you end up getting guest party members that all have exit, just in case you somehow don't have it.
That's nice.
is
The guest party members do kind of work as sort of like a metric of like, hey, where should I be in the game right now, like level wise?
Yeah.
Because you never really like learn the levels of any monsters, and the game is so riddled with status effects that sometimes it's hard to tell how hard a monster
Right.
actually even really is.
Also, I'm pretty sure they constantly replace monsters with monsters that are closer to your level, or at least closer to the story level.
I feel
I'm
that
not
way
certain
as
of that.
well.
Yeah.
It did feel like it wasn't static.
Right.
Let's talk about the food system.
Yeah.
So, in the game,
Yeah.
occasionally when you defeat an enemy, it will drop meat or parts.
Yeah, so this is something carried over from the previous games. In the previous games, you could optionally have a character in your party that was a monster, and sometimes monsters would leave their meat, and you could eat the meat and become a different kind of monster. Mm-hmm. And
Now
they changed it.
everyone can do it.
Right.
So the problem is
There's a lot of problems here.
there's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say this. This is such a cool idea. This is such a
yeah.
cool system.
It's one of the most unique things about the Game Boy Saga games.
So when you eat meat, you turn into a beast according to the elemental type of the monster and the elemental type that you were when you ate the meat.
Right.
And the level you were when you ate the meat. It's very complicated. There's like charts, right?
Yeah, I just ignored the charts and just occasionally ate things.
And if you eat enough meat, you turn into a monster?
No, you have to eat monster meat to
Monster
become a
meat
monster.
specifically.
So if you eat beast meat, you'll just stay a beast. But if you eat monster
and
meat,
beasts get stronger naturally as they progress through levels. They gain experience, but monsters do have to eat stronger monster meat to get stronger, right? Is that right?
no, they still gain levels.
Do they?
However, monsters cannot use equipment. So whatever equipment you
that's
have
what it
equipped
is.
on you, the monster does not see those stats. They do not get those benefits. It's basically null. However, they have innate benefits based on their monster job that will benefit them in some way.
Which is fine if it's a monster and it's static, but half the time if you're running a beast in your party, suddenly they'll level up, turn into a different beast, and get different talents. And then you're like, well, fuck. I was...
At least the beasts can use the equipment. So
True.
Whatever accessory you have, if it's immune to stone, at least
Yeah.
you're going to keep stone immunity. But as soon as you become a monster, you lose that because that
Yeah.
monster might not have stone immunity.
But even then, like if I'm playing as a beast, I'm like, oh, this beast has a good ability, and then they level up. Now I lose that ability, and maybe their current ability, their new abilities suck, and then I'm doing no damage. If you eat parts, you turn into a cyborg,
Right.
and then you can eventually turn into a robot
So yeah, by getting robot parts.
by getting robot parts. And if you are in either direction, if you're a monster, you can consume parts 2 times to turn into a human. If you're a
Right.
beast, you can consume parts 1 time to turn into a human.
Right.
And if you're on the robot end, you can consume meat in the same amount in order to turn back into a human or toward the beast end. And if this sounds overly complicated and confusing and weird, it's because it extremely is.
Also, if you're a monster and you eat beast meat, you revert back into a beast. So
Yeah.
also the cyborgs act kind of like robots from the previous Saga games, where based on what equipment they have on determines what their stats are. So if you equip a better sword, your HP will go up.
Yes.
than if you had a weaker one.
And
Robots, on the other hand, are stupid as shit. So they just have super low stats, but you can get capsules that increase their whatever stat it is, strength or HP or magic or whatever. And once they consume those capsules, as long as they don't change form or turn into a cyborg again, those stats are basically permanent. So you can give them absolute max stats if you're willing to pour enough money into capsules.
Yeah. But at that point, you're having to grind so much money, you might as well just have them be human and grind levels.
Right. Yeah.
I
I found having cyborgs were way more useful than having robots the entire game.
I found that this entire system was such a cool idea, but it was so frustrating to interact with that I almost never used it.
Yeah, I kept all of my characters default until they were at least level 15 or so, and then I started playing with the system and was able to take advantage of it. But for those first like 10 to 15 levels, humans and mutants have such well-balanced stats that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to play with this system yet.
But then even when you start playing with it, it's still just so confusing, and it's not random. But the charts to know what you're going to get are so complex that it might as well be random. You know what I mean?
Because I just treated it as if it was random and ended up enjoying it more than if I had tried to micromanage it.
I mean, I don't even know that I was really trying to micromanage it. I just wanted to know that I wasn't about to worsen my position.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just want to know, because and this is my problem with it. I feel like it should have some way to be like, hey, this will make you stronger.
Right.
Or even if it was just like, oh, eating this will definitely increase your stats. Just some kind of indicator of like, hey, am I about to take my character and make them a lot weaker in the middle of a dungeon I'm already having a hard time in?
Yeah. And that's,
with no fucking exit spell because I'm dumb.
And that's the thing that I was saying earlier. Like, somebody new to this game today who's not played any retro JRPGs would be so overwhelmed by how obtuse this is and how unapproachable it is, because it doesn't tell you, hey, if you eat this meat, you'll become this, or your stats will become this when you eat this. And
now,
it should.
The DS remake, which there is a fan translation of, does show you. It shows you if you've eaten that type of meat, then it'll tell you exactly what you're going to turn into, what abilities you're going to gain and lose. It's great.
Yeah. However, it takes away the experience in MP systems and reintroduces traditional Saga systems, so you just randomly gain stat ups.
And so where it simplifies, or maybe not simplifies, but elucidates the meat and parts system. It adds in a ton of extra other systems that make it dramatically more complex.
Yeah.
Because, like, if I'm looking at Saga 3 on paper, if I have all my guides pulled up and all my charts and everything, it's not tremendously complex.
Yeah.
But it's cumbersome. And what I also get annoyed with is when you're grinding, if you're just mashing A, you will accidentally feed meat and parts to Arthur over and over and over again. And if you're grinding in an area where you're like, hey, I'm kind of went somewhere, like there's an area where I'm at in the game where you have to turn into a monster to infiltrate a monster town.
Yep.
And there are random encounters in this monster town. So I was like, oh, I'll just grind in front of the inn because I can walk inside and heal whenever I want. And I've been grinding there for a while. Yeah. But I keep accidentally fucking feeding shit to Arthur, and it's annoying. And then I'm like, all right, now I got to go back to the Talon. I got to get the Flush X, and which we haven't even talked about the story or anything. But this system, I hate that I'm complaining about it, because what an awesome idea.
Right.
But it just feels like half-baked.
Yeah, that's why I actually do like the system a little bit better in Final Fantasy Legend 2 or in Saga Frontier, where it's just the monsters that can change. And even though you don't always know what you're going to turn into, generally it's good enough that you can make it work, whatever it ends up being.
This one, it's not just that you can make yourself a little worse. You can make yourself dramatically less effective, depending on what you've just eaten.
Yeah, there was at one point where I suddenly turned into a monster. I went from a monster that had an ability that was strong against everything in the dungeon to a monster that was weak against everything in the dungeon. And man, did that suck.
And we should also talk about, because we both were playing in the collection. I started in an emulator and I bought the collection because it was on sale and I was playing in the collection. This game, everything is so dramatically slow. I mean, The collection has a double speed mode. I figured out it's about 2x.
Yeah,
and even
I played
that
the entire
is-
game on
is-
double speed, and it
even
still
double
felt
speed
slow.
is excruciatingly slow, but
Yeah.
regular speed is so slow that I'm like, are they fucking with me? Like, is this a joke?
Yeah,
Like,
I played enough of Game Boy Saga to remember that's exactly how slow it was in all of them. So
it is not snappy. It's
No.
and what happens is that slowness
Mm-hmm.
makes you impatient. You're just fucking pushing buttons because you're like, just do a thing. And so I was always running into shit where I'm like accidentally feeding the wrong parts to the wrong person or eating something when I don't mean to, just because
I
I'm
didn't
just
have
mashing
too many
buttons.
problems with that, but that's mostly because I was playing it on the TV, so I was like mostly focused on it, and I was just holding the button down during battles. I wasn't tapping.
Yes.
So
Well, here's my thing is auto battle is so trash that I would set it up to where my grinding method was my humans would attack and my mutants would both cast Quake, which didn't do a ton of damage, but it would hit a lot of guys and I would
Yeah.
get through battles quickly. So I'm alternating between holding the button to speed up the text speed and then hitting my rapid fire A button on the back of my deck to quickly pick all my things and continue the battle, that sometimes I'd accidentally hit the rapid fire button and feed Arthur some junk.
see, I would just
didn't
set them
mean
all
to.
on auto and just go to town. They do their thing.
It's so close to being awesome.
Yeah.
So close. I do want to get to the story because I feel like it's going to get hard to talk about too much without the story, but let's get through the rest of gameplay.
Yeah, so you got your standard dungeons, and it is they feel a little more Final Fantasy with their layout. Also, it does have the jumping, which was also used in
Yes.
Mystic Quest, which I do like the jumping, but the game is mostly linear.
I like the jumping puzzles in general. They're kind of fun to go through.
Yeah, the last dungeon has the best jumping puzzles. I will say that.
Yeah.
However, the random encounter rate can go to fucking hell.
Well,
God.
here's the thing. If you jump, you make less floor contact
True.
and have less random encounters. So then you just have to listen to this the whole time you're playing.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, I have no idea what kind of algorithm it uses to determine the random encounters, because sometimes I'll hit an encounter literally every step for like 10 steps in a row. And other
And then
times,
sometimes you'll go a whole floor with nothing.
yeah, at least a floor. Sometimes I'll go like the other day I was just grinding on the overworld, right? And I did the submersion thing where I'm under the water, right? And so I'm just trying to go right all the way around the world to start grinding. I looped the world 12 times. The music looped twice before I ever encountered a battle.
There have been areas where I thought there were not random encounters in
Right.
that area. And then
Yeah.
like the second time I go to it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like I don't.
Right. But fortunately, it seems that the rate to flee battle is at or very, very near 100%. So at least you can run when you're constantly inundated with battles.
The game seems really focused on the idea of elements.
Yeah.
Very much like elemental weaknesses and strengths. Different monsters have different elemental weaknesses and strengths. And it's one of the few stats that the game does prominently show to you.
Right. And it's not even just elements. It's also like types of weaponry.
Yeah. But then it's so hard to see what does that damage
Yes.
that it's just, it feels frustrating. It just is a chart game. You're just always looking at charts.
Yeah.
And
what-
a lot of stuff isn't named very sensically, so it's a lot of looking at charts because you're like, it took me the longest time to realize that lit is lightning.
Oh, I knew that because I'd played the NES and Super NES Final Fantasies.
I was like, oh, lit is lightning. I was like, what are they litting? What is this? Lit, like read? Like what is? And then I finally figured out, I was like, it's lightning. That's
Yeah.
the lightning spell. Yeah. I solved it, Saturn.
Yeah, it was always anyway. Now when you get near the end game, so there's this whole story bit about 4 mystic swords, and a lot of enemies you encounter in the last like third of the game are quote strong against damage, which means that any standard attack does like a third what it would normally do, unless you were using one of those mystic swords.
Yeah.
But as we mentioned earlier, monsters can't use weapons, so your monsters are effectively useless against those enemies.
Yeah.
And when it becomes most of the enemies, that becomes the monsters become completely useless in battle at that point, and it's very frustrating.
I feel like this is one of the more difficult RPGs that I've ever played. Partly because it is just very obtuse and opaque and hard to understand. And then even when you do understand it, it's just cumbersome to actually go through the motions some of the times in a meaningful way that you know it is going to happen.
I didn't have any real difficulty issues. I did have some tedium issues. That was where my problem came from.
Yeah, it's just I'll agree with that. It's definitely tedious. I found it really difficult. The amount of status effects the game inflicts on you is tremendous.
It's obscene.
And you have limited spell inventory and limited inventory.
Yes. Yeah.
So
You have 9 softs and they'll be gone in 2 battles.
yeah, it's really difficult to stay properly equipped. Even if it were a normal rate of status effects,
Right.
it would still be difficult to stay properly equipped. But this game, I mean, and the battles are against huge amounts of enemies. I mean, you're fighting like 6, 8, 10 enemies at a time.
Sometimes, yeah.
And sometimes every one of them does a status effect every round.
It's and the further you get in the game, the less it seems to happen, which that seems backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had read an interview, and I can't remember if it was about the creation of the first game or this one, but they had mentioned that because they were working on the Game Boy, and they knew that people would be playing this game while they're on their commuter train or whatever, going to work, that they wanted to make sure that everybody in their short play session would have a chance to have some kind of action and encounter at least one battle. But they also wanted the game to be short enough that you could finish the game on a flight from Tokyo to Honolulu.
That's very specific.
Right. That's the weirdest description.
It sounds like they made the game for one fucking guy that was like, hey, will y'all make me a game? And they're like, sure, what are you doing? He's like, well, I fly to Honolulu a lot. And I got a long commute.
Yeah. And when I read that, I was like, well, that explains the bizarre encounter rate, I guess, and how truncated the rest of the story is. But those two things don't mesh well together.
Yeah. I was constantly frustrated by the fact that I had to have a phone or tablet with me at all times while playing, just to keep guides and charts and all that stuff up.
I play all games with a laptop in my lap, so I have that there to look up everything. So that it's not an issue.
A lot of it is like I'm running around my house doing my dad and husband thing, you know. And so a lot of it is like when I go to a room, like because I have to go watch my daughter put on a concert or play Beanie Babies or whatever,
Right.
I take one thing with me.
Yeah.
And it's my phone, a book I'm reading, my Steam Deck, my whatever. And so half the time I'd be like in her playroom, stuck in like a kid-sized chair, grinding in Legend 3 and drinking imaginary tea. and then I'm like, oh fuck, man. Do I want to eat this meat? Like, what element am I right now? Oh, I can't check it when I'm on the meat selection screen. Like, if they would just let you look at the status of your characters
I
on
never once looked at what element I was. Not once.
Oh my god! Well, it's don't, because it's frustrating.
I didn't care
it just
about it. I was
becomes
just
annoying.
like, is that beast or monster? Okay, I will eat that one. That
and then
was my
also,
entire qualification.
it's so frustrating when I'm a cool-looking beast, and then they turn into a dumb-looking beast.
Yeah, that part I didn't care about at all. I was like,
wanna be
oh, give me
cool
some more dumb-looking ones. I'll take that.
Let's talk story in the game.
It legally has a story. We have to disclose that there is technically something called a story here.
So you play as Arthur, Curtis, Gloria, and Sharon,
The most Japanese names.
which are the funniest JRPG names in the world to me. Just every time it's like, Sharon fell! And I'm like, oh no, Sharon!
It sounds like the rejected names from the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, like
These are the
Arthur at
leftover
least,
names.
okay, you know, that makes it, but then like, yes, Arthur, the legendary hero, and his companion Curtis. Like, just doesn't...
Yeah. And I looked up their original names, and it is not that. So that is the original names were where is it here? Okay, so Arthur's name was Dune. Yeah. Curtis was Polnareff.
Okay, yeah.
Gloria was Milfil, I think. And Sharon was Cyril.
You have to say it like that, all pretentiously.
A lot of extra letters in there. It looks like somebody trying to imitate French people.
Yeah, and I like
Poorly.
Dune. Oh, what's your hero's name? His name is Frank Herbert's Dune, and she shall save us from the future.
And this is his girlfriend, Sharon.
Frank Herbert's Sharon. So they're training in a VR simulation to basically get a time machine and go save the world.
Well, first they were sent back in time from the future because the future was flooded and
it was fucked. Yeah.
And they were sent back in time, and then they spent their entire childhood training in a VR simulator.
And the time machine that came back in somehow broke and all of its parts exploded everywhere.
Yeah, including into the past, because sure.
And the future. Well, I guess they came from the future, so
Right.
maybe
So it
those are
makes
new
sense
ones.
there's
Maybe those aren't the
parts
same ones. So you're going around trying to repair this time-traveling space jet called Talon,
Yes.
which makes no sense why they need to have why is it a spaceship?
It's
don't-
just a time ship. It's also like a flying
What is
ship.
a time ship? What is that even? There's no reason for it to be a ship.
Well, you can use it as transportation later. You can
Yeah,
fly
you
around
could
the
also
world.
use other shit as transportation. They could have just gave you a little airship or something. They
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
So you have to go in the past and
Yeah.
find units, are what they're called.
yeah. They call them units, are the parts of your time ship.
You can get the Flush X pretty early on, even though I didn't get it until many, many hours into the game because I didn't know to go talk to the shopkeep in that one town in the item shop.
Okay.
Because I never go into item shops in any game.
Oh, okay.
Because what the fuck do I need items for?
I go to every shop the second I get to every town.
Of course you do,
Maybe
Saturn.
that's why this game was so fast for me.
No,
because it's
I don't
like
go in-
designed for me.
The fuck am I going to do in an item shop? Let me buy a potion. I have cure. It's fine. It's
Like,
fucking
you
fine.
Check to see what they have in case they have something you don't see yet.
No, I go to the magic shop and the weapon shop and maybe the armor shop, maybe, but not always. Maybe if I feel like it. I will say the guide I was following, I got to a really tough. It was the chaos battle.
Yeah.
Which is not the impost, by the way, for
No.
people that are used to Final Fantasy. It's chaos, and I'm finding I can't beat him,
Yeah.
and finally I backtrack out of the dungeon entirely, and I'm like I've been fighting him for an hour and a half nonstop. There's no configuration of luck or items or equipment that I can figure out to make this work, right? So then I go grind for a few minutes and I turn into some beasts and cyborgs and try again and it's way worse.
Oh.
And so then I don't have exit because apparently I'm dumb and I backtrack all the way out of the entire fucking dungeon. It's a
Yep.
huge dungeon. And I'm reading the guide and the next thing it has me do is go to a town that was already accessible and upgrade my armor and weapons a huge amount. And I was like,
see-
why the fuck didn't you say that before I go to this dungeon?
I wasn't using a guide. I was just using maps. And so the second that I would reach any new overworld, I was like, well, first things first, I hit every single town on this map and buy the best equipment that I can get anywhere.
Well, I was doing a guide because it was a pain in the ass to go to because I'd have to go to a town, look at the items there. Then I have to look at the item chart to see if these are better or worse than the other town, and then maybe go back to the other town because this is the worst town and that's the better town. And that tedium was too
Yeah.
annoying to me. So I was like, fuck it, I'll just follow a guide and they'll tell me what to buy in which towns. I got to worry about it.
Right.
No, it fucked me. And it's the only guide in English for the game on GameFAQs.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't using GameFAQs at all. Well, no, I was using the maps off of GameFAQs. But that was it.
So you get the Flush X, which I got many hours later.
Yeah, I
which-
appreciate that the Flush X is literally a toilet that you use to shit out the meat that you ate so that you could become human again.
Yeah, or shit out the bolts and
Robot
screws
parts?
you ate. I guess this does imply that they're eating robot parts, like, and they're not like cool nano machines. They're just like a
No.
pile of fucking bolts and
It's just some
grease that you're like,
bolts. Yeah.
you're like,
Fuck it, I'll eat it. I'm hungry.
I'm a cyborg now. You're not wrong. If you swallow electronics, you are technically now a cyborg for at least the next 16 hours or so.
I ate half a Raspberry Pi. So
You're a raspberry
a
cyborg now. So you get some time machine parts. You go to the future and everything's flooded. You team up with a person from your childhood who's grown up into a fighter.
Yeah.
And then they don't do so well
No.
at all. And they
He gets-
clone him.
Did you get that far?
No.
Oh my god. So he gets completely wrecked by a boss, right? Because he decides to solo this boss because you were distracted by the stupidest enemy. And and he gets wrecked, and you take his dying body back to this doctor from the future that helped you, and you're like, "Doctor, can you save him?" And the doctor says, I can clone anyone from a single tissue." And then he just runs off. You hear, "Ow, stop it." And then the dude is fine, like just fine, everything's normal.
So he went in there and killed the original, cloned him,
Yeah.
and just did a whole Dr. Venture. That's great.
Yep.
I'm gonna let you take over for the story from here, because that part is right after where I left off.
All right. So then you go into the Pure Land, which is where the water is coming from that's flooding the world, right?
Yeah.
And the Pure Land is basically the game's real overworld. It's bigger than all of the previous overworlds combined. And so this is basically where the game starts. And also, you can no longer go back to any of the previous areas anymore. And your float and your dive spells stop working. So you have to rely on the Talon for everything at this point. So your first task is to reunite with 4 crew members of the Talon, though I think they were from a different ship also called the Talon. I'm not completely certain on the plot at all because it doesn't make sense. And then you're also told to start collecting these 4 mystic swords. And you do find these crew members, and then they join your ship, and they all open up shops that sell the best equipment, and they're all in your ship. And then the Talon crashes in a sandstorm because it's the only place where you can fly, and you get caught in the sandstorm, and you crash, and it's destroyed, and you fight a boss, and then you walk into the next town, and the first person you talk to says, "Oh, it's you kids. I just built a new Talon, and it's got all of the parts that your old one had, and here you go, and it's done. It's fine."
Awesome.
Yeah.
And makes sense.
Yes. And then to get the last 2 Mystic Swords and the rest of the units for the Talon, you have to go into the Underworld, which is basically the game's version of Hell. And that's like one of the first monsters you talk to in the Underworld. Actually, I saved a screenshot of this so I could get the exact quote. Talon uses a human brain for its control system. And that's all that this thing tells you. And you're like, "Oh, that's weird,
Gross.
Extra information I didn't need to know." Anyway, and then you exit the Underworld, and there's this whole northern continent in the Pure Land that is surrounded by a barrier, and you had to go through the Underworld to disable this barrier. And when you go to disable the barrier, Dion suddenly announces, "Oh, the doctor implanted my body with a bomb, so let me destroy the barrier." And he just runs up to the barrier and fucking explodes.
I don't think he's making clones. I think he's making like suicide robots.
Right. So then your new party member is this guy Borgin, who is the guy who sent you back
the
in
best
time.
fucking name. Right? It's me, Borgin. I'm here.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
So he's the dude who sent you back in time at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And he almost immediately tells you that the brain powering your Talon is your father.
Wait a minute.
And
the brain powering this Talon or the original Talon?
they don't specify.
So
It could be
Does
the
that
one that
mean
got
they
blown
just-
up.
Well, it could be if it's the new one. That just means they had your dad's brain in a jar hanging out this whole time. So
Yeah.
we put your dad in a new one. Yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't like that or what?
So then you go into a castle in a mountain, which is like just a super long dungeon, and it's really irritating. And you confront Soul, who I think is just a translation of God, just trying to skirt Nintendo's localization.
Yeah.
And then he keeps telling you, "Oh, you're doing a good job defeating me. Keep going. Good
Yeah.
job, kids. Keep going. You've almost destroyed me. It's okay. I need this. I need to be destroyed. Keep on coming. Good job. Very good. Very good." And then he gets taken over by Zagor, who is the real bad guy. And
Who you've not heard anything of before now.
like 3 people mentioned him,
Okay. All right.
including like everyone in the Underworld. Everyone in the Underworld is like, "Oh, we love Zagor. Who's Zagor? We love him. Cool."
Yeah. Right.
And then you defeat him, and it destroys the Pure Land completely. The party barely gets out. The Talon is destroyed again, and you take the parts of the Talon back to that doctor, and he's able to reclone Dion again. And during the cloning, he's like, "Don't put a bomb in me again this time."
Why doesn't he clone your dad?
And he clones your dad
Oh, thank God.
using the brain from the Talon pieces.
So that means they did have your dad's brain just sitting around this whole fucking time.
And you go up
So
to
whose
him.
brain was in the original Talon? Your mom's?
Who knows?
Whose fucking brain was it?
So you go up
This is some fucking RoboCop shit. Like, yeah, we got a convicted felon. We put his brain in this time ship.
So you go up to your dad, and he's like, "Great job, hero. What's your name? Arthur? That's great. I think I'm going to name my son that."
God damn it.
And then you walk away, and the doctor's like, "What are you going to do?" And you're like, "We've got to go back to our time that we were raised in. That is not the time we were born in."
Yeah.
But and then one of the quotes is, "We saved everyone of every generation."
Except the people that exploded
Right, all the
themselves.
people that keep exploding. And then the doctor says, "Won't you stay for a while?" And he says, "I have to go. I will be born soon." And that's basically the end. And they even put little emphasis dashes around "I" in
Do
that
you think
sentence.
that guy, as his plane was landing in Honolulu, and he was like whoa, like, do you think it like blew his fucking mind?
Yeah, that was the best flight to Honolulu that guy ever
I
had.
will be born. That's the kind of shit that I would hear when I'm like 12 and be like, holy fucking shit, dude. Whoa, man, my fucking brain is exploded.
Just like Dion's.
Oh my. Or like my dad's or my mom's. Or who is it? I don't know.
Who was first Talon? Or maybe they cloned the brain and just used it again.
Let's get through reception and legacy
yeah.
and wrap this up.
Yeah. So it sold a game.
Yeah.
SoftBank says that it sold 650,000 units by 2002. So that's just over 500,000 units in about 10 years, which is not great. It was the weakest selling of the Game Boy Saga games, so the reviews were generally pretty favorable. But it between its original print, its Western print, and its Western reprint, it still barely broke 500,000. So that's not real great.
Yeah, and there was the remake,
There was the remake.
which never came out in the U.S. Came out in 2011,
Yeah.
and it, like you said, it really kind of mixes regular Saga systems with this. The fan translation is decent. It's just it's that sort of DS JRPG thing where like the camera's kind of wonky. It's a very complicated game, like basically every other Saga game.
And they spend too much time focusing on every single animation in the game.
Yeah, I have heard that it's the exact same game, so the length is the same. It's just there's more stuff. So I mean, it's a little bit longer, but it's not like they added a bunch of story beats or anything. So that's an option if you want to play that.
Yeah, and also that version only sold 59,000 units in its first year.
Oh, geez.
So
No wonder it didn't come out here.
Yeah, that's the whole story of the game's sales are pretty sad. No wonder Square Osaka didn't last that long.
They're still making Saga games.
They are.
That's a thing.
It was the last Western Saga game until Saga Frontier came out 5 years later.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Then
the Saga series was a mess because they did get some new entries up until about 2002, and then it pretty much died until Saga Scarlet Grace on Vita, and since then it's just been mobile games. So it's just kind of sad since the early 2000s.
Yeah, I feel like it just never. I don't want to say bad things about the Saga games. I've played almost none of them, but
I played a lot more, so I'll say some bad things. It's an awkward series. It's a series that always feels like it's trying to find its identity, and the few things that it could claim as its identity, it keeps wanting to throw away in favor of chasing something new. And so
I went online after playing this because I was like, I want to play the best Saga game because I'm like, which one's the best one? And you go. And you look in like, see, here's the thing. You go and I go find Steam threads and forum threads of people like, hey, what's the best Saga game? And every single person is naming a different game. I mean, like every fucking person.
Well,
and what I've realized is just every game is so goddamn different that
Yes.
you just have to pick the one you think you'll like the most.
Correct. Yeah.
And then don't play the other ones.
Right. And never play the other ones because then you'll realize that the series has nothing in common.
As far as final thoughts.
Yeah.
I think if you want to play a good sci-fi JRPG, go play Phantasy Star.
Any of them, really. Especially Phantasy Star 4, though. That's the one.
And
And if you want to play a good time travel JRPG, play Chrono Trigger.
I didn't hate my time with this.
Yeah.
I was trying to remind myself, Game Boy, 1993, like
91
you know,
is when this originally came out.
Oh Jesus, 91.
Yeah.
But it feels dated. It has such cool ideas, and with just like a little bit more. Like, this is the kind of game where, like, if someone did like a DX version ROM hack that just showed you some extra statistics of things, like
And
in
made
shops
things run faster.
then I would be like, this is great. Go play this. It's a little goofy, but what a fun game.
Or if
it's so
Square's
close.
re-release compilation had added some of that stuff.
Yeah, or added
Anything.
Yeah. It's so close to being a really good Game Boy RPG.
I would say for when it came out, it was a good Game Boy JRPG. However,
totally.
It was the medium evolved, and things got better, and programming got better, and design got better, and it's hard to go back to this without
it's
a
real
lot
tough.
of supplemental material.
And especially like if I'm playing on PC or my Steam Deck or something, like I've got all the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, I've got Chrono Trigger installed, I've got the Sega collections with all the Phantasy Star games. Like I've got such better options in front of me, and this is one of those games that I want to love a lot of things about it.
Yeah.
But the stuff I want to love is just it's not quite there. It's just a little undercooked.
I do love the adorable Game Boy aesthetics, though.
Oh yeah, I mean,
That's the
I
best
wish everything was Game Boy. Everything should get a Game Boy graphics pack. It would be
That
perfect.
said, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I
think
would
we both passed each other two ships in the night because I was going into it like, man, this is fun. And then as time went, because here's the thing, because I was talking about it on the show, because I played it like, a couple hours here and there. And what happened was I just assumed I didn't understand the systems yet. And so I was like, it's a little confusing, but I'm having a really good time, and I feel like I keep fucking myself. And then the more I learned about the systems, the more frustrated I got because I was like, oh, they're just fucking broken. I just thought I didn't get them, which was right. I didn't get them, but also they just kind of don't work for what they're supposed to do.
I feel like they weren't designed for people to want to optimize them or come up with the best solution using them. I think the mechanics in the game were designed for people to just goof around and have fun and hope it worked.
Which is fine if the game doesn't have an insanely high encounter rate with huge amounts of status effects and a
Yeah.
relatively high difficulty.
Yeah.
So those two ideas don't mesh, right? It's either fun and goofy and do whatever, and it's kind of lighthearted. Like I feel like Mystic Quest hit that nail on the head
Yes.
pretty good.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of the ideas they started with here were done so much better in Mystic Quest.
Yeah, let it be silly, let it be fun, let it be easy. This was like they wanted to be the silly fun, trying random stuff, eating piles of bolts and seeing what happens. But then it's like, oh, well, but if I do that, I could potentially screw myself in the middle of whatever I'm doing or make myself worse or dramatically inhibit the ability of my party to progress through whatever I'm going through.
Right.
And so it just undercooked.
Yeah.
Undercooked. I think like Mystic Quest is definitely the place to go, which needs a pixel remaster. Square Enix, please pixel
Right?
remaster Mystic. They'll never do it in a million years. But
No, I say that this is still a fun game, but man, go into it with real low expectations.
oh yeah, if you're like a hardcore RPG person and you're used to playing older stuff, where like you kind of need to have some
Yes.
charts in front of you just to even buy gear and shit, and you're okay with that, yeah, I mean, yeah, totally.
That's me. So, and I enjoyed it. So that makes sense. Also, if you just if you bounced off of other games in the Saga series, but still want to try something in it, this is probably the most approachable for people who don't like the Saga series.
Yeah. My next attempt is going to be the fan translation of the Wonder Swan version of Final Fantasy Legend 1. I think that's... is it bad? Don't say, oh!
I'm just saying that's a weird, obtuse pick.
It's supposed, because here's my thing. I want to like one of these Game Boy Saga games. I really do. I don't like this one. I need it just a little bit updated. And the Wonder Swan color version of Legend 1 updates it a little bit, where you can actually see stats on things, and it's the UI is a little better, and it's in color, and I think that's going to be where I want to be, because I don't quite want the full DS remake thing where it's like full modern era JRPG complexity. I'm not after that.
It's fair.
But this is also so archaic that it's hard for me to parse. I'm hoping Legend, the Wonder Swan color version of Legend 1, is going to be kind of that middle ground of like almost this like sort of 16-bit era feeling version of the game that I can.
Let me know how that one is, because I haven't tried that version of it.
Yeah. When I learned about it, I thought it was Legend 3 that had gotten the Wonder Swan remake, and I was like, fuck yes, and it was not, and then I was disappointed. But you know what you won't be disappointed about is if you give us $1 on our Patreon, patreon.com/retrowarriors. You get uncut versions of the show. You can get Talking Wizards, which is kind of on a weird schedule right now because child injuries
Life
and vacations and stuff. But yeah, it would mean a lot to us if you would give us money, because we like that. Also, if you would just tell your friends about the show, it would help a lot. I know that every content creator out there is like, yeah, tell your friends, smash the like button. But it really does help us out to just like, if you have a friend that likes video games, be like, oh, I listened to these guys yell about some guy's dad's brain in a spaceship for 45 minutes.
This is a long episode. It was more than 45 minutes, sir.
All right then, but for too long we did that. It would mean a lot to us. Thumbs up it, like it, review it, whatever. You know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. You know how to do it. You go do it, and then that's what we want.
Go up Tumblr it, whatever.
Yeah,
however
whatever,
it is that you share things.
Send a woof or whatever, and like, dude, the fucking TikToks. You do
What's
it.
The internet.
And we'll just we'll just appreciate that you've done that. Yeah. Go make a Twitter or something. I don't fucking know how it works.
Go buy Twitter. Push your things on it.
Anyway, we want to thank the following patrons for their kind donations, starting with Nicholas Perfect.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe.
Christopher Britt.
Luke Saracen Clark.
Slick Rick.
Dean Schmidt.
Captain Koloff.
James Myers.
Ridley Scott's mom.
And a winner is me.
Are all the people we want to thank for their kind donations. And we want to thank you for listening to the show that we just completed.
You just vomited out. That's the correct verb for it.
We hope it was good for you, too.
Is that how we end the show now?
No, I need to make it a question. Was it good for you? It's called a call to action. And then they'll Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.